Superhero films have had a lengthy cinema history, and over the past decade alone, they've overwhelmingly dominated the box office and been the number one offender in, well, getting moviegoers into seats. And despite the many ups and downs we've seen from the genre, it doesn't appear like we're going to be rid of a world without superhero films anytime soon. But how did we get to this point? How has the popularity of these films stood the test of time so well? The answer lies in large part with a single film that helped redefine the genre and what it was capable of. Christopher Nolan's first film in his Dark Knight trilogy, Batman Begins, not only changed the course of superhero movies, but would alter the entirety of the Hollywood movie scene as we know it. Today, I want to talk about how Batman Begins saved the superhero genre. Welcome to the Director Project, a massive series of playlists that focuses on a new director each month. This month we'll be focusing on the works of Christopher Nolan. You'll find a link to the full playlist down below, and again at the end of this video. My name is Dakota, and you're watching Geek Critique. If you enjoy our content, please take a moment to absolutely obliterate that like button. Seriously, it goes a long way towards YouTube pushing the video to others who might enjoy it also. For the Spielberg playlist, I chose to discuss the extremely unlikely accomplishment of making dinosaurs appear real in 1993's Jurassic Park, and how he and others made that happen. For our Miyazaki playlist, I chose to dissect Miyazaki's entire oeuvre through the lens of his 1984 film, Nausicaa of the Valley of the Wind, and how the themes in that movie would propel and influence his entire career. Now for this Nolan playlist, I want to revisit 2005's Batman Begins, and through an examination of its major themes, show how, when superimposed with the history of superhero films, it laid the foundation for everything to follow. Now, it must be stated, the first major superhero film, 1978's Superman and its sequel Superman 2, hold up remarkably well, and are for all intents and purposes the films that started it all. I'm not arguing that. Superman 3 and 4, however, pushed that particular franchise into the ground. The Superman brand, at least on film, fell, and would remain down for nearly 20 years. But in 1989, shortly after the fourth Superman installment, another franchise would find its footing. Tim Burton's Batman would bring superheroes into a new era of profitability. Toy sales would drive the success of the first two films through the roof, but the urge to capitalize on that would come at a steep price. 1995's Batman Forever and the fourth installment, 97's Batman and Robin, would tarnish the brand to a point where it seemingly couldn't pick itself back up. Between 1997 and 2005's Batman Begins, there were no less than 6 Batman live-action film projects that were inevitably scrapped. Like Superman before him, Batman and his brand had fallen. There will be a payoff to all this information, I promise. I'm not just going through the history of superhero films for the sake of it, so please stick with me for a bit, but you can probably already see where this is going. Film franchises rise and fall, and then something happens and a new superhero takes its place as the bigger and better thing. While Batman was flailing about in the 90s, DC Comics' longtime rival, Marvel, was also in a tough spot. The company, on the verge of collapse, filed for bankruptcy in 1996. They were forced to license out their characters to different movie studios in a last-ditch effort to keep the company alive. These character licensing efforts to different studios would eventually culminate in the modern era of superhero films, beginning with 2000's X-Men and 2002's Spider-Man, amongst a slew of others that performed to varying degrees of success. The films presented characters in a far less campy way, making their plight believable and relatable. They and their sequels brought incredible heart to the table, along with intricate relational struggles and antagonists that you can empathize with. While these new film series saw initial success and were a step up from the superhero films of the past, something would need to change if they were going to continue to entertain audiences for years to come. Because, inevitably, all franchises and niche genres rise before they fall.
Took quite a fall, didn't we, Master Bruce?
And why do we fall, Bruce? So we can learn to pick ourselves up.
Batman Begins is as much a movie about rebirth as it literally is a film giving new life to a fallen franchise. It is, in fact, the very first major reboot of a superhero film series, and Nolan presents us with a character that hits rock bottom before rebuilding himself back up. This may not seem like a big deal from the hindsight of a world where rebooting characters is commonplace, but in 2005, this was a fresh move for the genre, and a necessary one. It removed Bruce Wayne from the campy Schumacher films of the 90s that so stained the brand and replaced him into the modern era of superheroes, giving the Caped Crusader a new lease on life. It also helped tremendously that Christopher Nolan, one of the greatest working directors of our time, was behind the movie, as the quality places it amongst the greatest superhero films ever. The film presents us with many themes that interweave with the notion of restarting oneself, many of which can be seen to have heavily influenced future films. This seemingly simple idea for a reboot, then, would prove to be a fundamental step towards the eventual rebooting of other franchises as their respective series ended, or fell from grace, such as the Amazing Spider-Man series that followed the original trilogy, or the pseudo-reboot of the X-Men franchise with First Class. Please note that at the time Batman Begins released, dedication to the original films and their vision prompted other filmmakers towards remaking new films in their previous likenesses. A prime example of this was 2006's Superman Returns, which decided not to reboot the Superman character altogether, but to simply ignore the events of Superman 3 and 4 and create a new third film. It was a revamp and not a total reboot, and having been in production while Batman Begins was in production, the lessons learned from Nolan's film couldn't translate. But Hollywood soon picked up on how successful a true reboot could be. Batman Begins is also the first film to fully, 100% commit to a superhero's origin story. Most films show us glimpses of the events that spawned their powers, or some montage of them making a suit, but ultimately present us with the final version of a hero in his or her prime. 2002's Spider-Man did a great job of relating the arc that Peter Parker went through to become Spider-Man, but the character had fully embraced the role by the film's second half. But the entirety of Batman Begins is devoted towards presenting you with the complete origin of this character. The harrowing fall into the caverns below Wayne Manor, his fear of bats, the death of his parents, his journey of self-discovery, the training he receives from the League of Shadows, his inability to take a life, his return to Gotham, the creation of his suit and equipment, the creation of his Bruce Wayne facade, the creation of a symbol, and his eventual saving of Gotham for the first time. Throughout the film, while he is becoming this new person, this new ideal, he doesn't truly become the Batman until the end of the film, which then, in the very last frame, presents us with the title card, Batman Begins. Here, finally, the film allows us to believe that Bruce Wayne has become something more. He has begun to be Batman. The idea of beginning a film with someone who needs to ascend into the ranks of heroics by finding the ideals they strive for, and only just becoming the superhero the world needs at the end of the story, starts right here with Batman Begins, and we've seen it a number of times since, to great effect. It's not until the very end of 2008's Iron Man that Tony Stark reveals to the world what he's finally realized.
I am Iron Man.
A phrase that would echo down all the way to Avengers Endgame. Doctor Strange doesn't become the protector of the Sanctum Sanctorum until after the climactic ending. Diana Prince doesn't even know her true origin until she meets Ares at the end of the film's narrative. This isn't to say that origin stories are always the way to go, and lately they've been straying away from them. But it was through this path ventured first by Batman Begins that helped birth each of these individual franchises. Christopher Nolan injected several key themes into the movie that helped flesh out what the origin of a person like Batman would be. He would need to fall, he would need to confront his fear, he would need to become more than just a man. Impressively, the narrative structure of the entire movie stands on these ideas and themes and doesn't digress from these at any point. In so doing, Nolan has presented us with not only the quintessential mythos behind the Batman, but also the archetypal origin story. We begin the movie at a particularly low point in Bruce Wayne's life. He's in the midst of a 7-year journey of rediscovery after the vengeance on his parents' killer is taken from him. We find him imprisoned, attempting to understand the criminal underbelly of society, but in so doing having lost himself. It's in prison, however, that he is contacted by the League of Shadows, who train Bruce to take justice into his own hands. It's here that Bruce understands that the path to serving true justice is to become something more than just a man.
If you make yourself more than just a man, if you devote yourself to an ideal, and if they can't stop you, then you become something else entirely.
He learns that through certain acts of theatricality and deception, he can create a legend for himself.
You must become more than just a man in the mind of your opponent.
With new perspective on what he can do to help the people of Gotham, Bruce clues Alfred in on his intentions, though he hasn't fully fleshed out what that entails. His father before him galvanized the wealthy elite into action when he was killed, but only for a short while until the criminal underworld took hold of Gotham again at its roots. He realizes that the people will need dramatic examples to shake them out of their apathy, something impossible to accomplish as Bruce Wayne.
As a man,
I'm flesh and blood. I can be ignored, I can be destroyed, but as a symbol, I can be incorruptible. I can be everlasting.
Upon returning to Gotham, Bruce finds the symbol he needs to become has been a part of him his whole life. The bats that so tormented him in his youth, the winged symbols of fear that live simultaneously in the darkest hole of Wayne Manor and in the deepest recesses of his subconscious, the elemental nightmare that has become synonymous with Bruce's most devastating falls and failings. This, the bat, would be that symbol.
Why bats, Master Wayne?
Bats frighten me. This time my enemies shared my dread.
The film's opening scene sees a young Bruce fall into an old well that would lead him to the caves he would one day turn into his Batcave, seemingly attacked by what he couldn't see. This would be far from the only time Bruce falls in the movie, as Nolan wanted to show how an imperfect, corruptible man could continuously fall and rise back up to become something more. I'm not kidding, the guy literally keeps falling. Bruce falls into ice, falls out of an exploding building, falls off another building, falls out of a building on fire, falls under the weight of a log, falls down an elevator shaft, falls with some guy, falls through the roof, and that's not counting the emotional and figurative falls he experiences. But each time, he finds the strength to get back up. Whether Nolan saw the parallel of how the Batman brand had fallen before this point and consciously created a film about picking it back up or not, it's remarkable how similar this trends in Hollywood. After Spider-Man 3 brought the series of films to a point where it couldn't continue, it was rebooted. It got back up. When X-Men The Last Stand failed to keep audiences on board, they gave it a soft reboot with First Class. We've seen a number of reboots and revamps throughout the years that signify a picking up of a franchise after a poorly received film or series. We've seen it with the Hulk, Thor, Daredevil, Superman, and yes, Batman. And now even the Justice League itself seems to be getting a new lease on life with the Snyder Cut, along with many more. Each of these brands has fallen, but if there's one thing that Batman Begins has taught Hollywood, it's that as a film or brand, they're just products and movies. They can be ignored, they can be torn down, but as a symbol they can be everlasting. No brand has taken this lesson to heart like the Marvel Cinematic Universe has. Kevin Feige has shepherded not just a handful of brands, but a handful of symbols towards the next level of what a blockbuster can attain to. Because inevitably there will be films that fall, or fail to reach the heart of the message they're trying to tell.
Why do we fall, sir? So that we can learn to pick ourselves up.
Through confronting his greatest fears, Bruce is able to harness it, channel it into anger, and in so doing make for himself the legend that Gotham needs, a symbol to look up to, and for his enemies to fear.
He's here.
Who?
The Batman.
The things they say about him. Can he really fly?
I heard he can disappear.
We finally see him take a leap of faith as he falls through a swarm of his greatest fear, an outward act of extreme theatricality and deception. But more importantly, it's a rebirth, a baptism of fire, or for him, bats. Likewise, Bruce Wayne creates the facade of himself that others will see, and destroys it. He's the last remnant of his father's legacy, and he takes the calculated risk of metaphorically burning his bridges.
The apple has fallen very far from the tree, Mr. Wayne.
But it's not until the necessary destruction of Wayne Manor via the League of Shadows that he can finally shed who he was, and what was holding him back from being the man, or the ideal he must become. Bruce Wayne took a risk. Batman Begins took that risk, and since then Hollywood has risked putting lesser-known characters into theaters in recent years, something they had long feared would end in failure, but has ultimately only added to their staying power and their resonance with audiences of all demographics. Several times throughout the film we see that Bruce is at odds with the police.
No one takes the law into their own hands in my city.
He's chased in his Tumbler. They call for backup to take him down, going so far as to call for a SWAT team.
Commissioner Loeb set up a massive task force to catch you.
I often see the argument that superhero films have damaged the state of cinema, or that smaller budget films often fall through the cracks because moviegoers have been trained to only go out and watch big tentpole franchises. I'm not going to argue that. Watching this video, it might seem convenient to suddenly shift the blame towards Christopher Nolan's incredible influence on the genre, because had Batman Begins not shaken up the mold, superhero movies may well have already gone the way of the Western, an action genre whose heyday is now long behind us. But in an ironic twist, it appears that it may well be superhero films that end up saving movie theaters. When asked whether movie theaters will survive the difficult times they're facing, Tom Hanks had this to say:
big event motion pictures are going to rule the day at the cinemas. After this, in order to guarantee that people show up again, we're going to have the Marvel Universe and all sorts of franchised. And some of those movies are great. You want to see them.
It isn't until there is no hope for Gotham, and there are no more police to send in, that Batman comes in to save the day. Similarly to the superhero genre and movie theaters, it seems, you either die a fallen brand, or you live long enough to see yourself become the hero the world needs, or something like that. Had Christopher Nolan not picked Batman back up, and showed Hollywood the means to continue successfully entertaining audiences for decades to come, it's hard to imagine what the movie scene might look like today. Will superhero movies become an everlasting ideal of the power of cinema, or will they eventually fall to a point where they cannot be picked back up? I really don't know, but what I do know is that without Batman Begins, we wouldn't have many of the superhero films we now love today.
I never said thank you.
And you'll never have to.
This film has been a blast to revisit. Please don't forget to give this video a like on your way out, and share it around on social media if you think I'm onto something with the parallels with other superhero films, and let me know your thoughts on Batman Begins in the comments below. Thanks as always to my lovely patrons who help us out each month. You guys are amazing. Click here to continue your journey through the Director Project and watch some more video essays on Christopher Nolan from some truly talented creators. Or if you're interested, check out this video about how Batman Begins fights suck, but that's okay. Thanks for watching, have a good one.